I am going to share a brown soda bread recipe with you today. So I love soda breads and I would make them quite a bit. So I hadn't shared a brown soda before, so I just thought I would, while I was making it, I'd record it. So into the brown soda, I would put plain flour, so about 250 of plain flour and then 150 of wholemeal. Now you can absolutely mix that up. So it could be, that's the great thing about soda bread. So I would generally go with the rule of like 450 of dry ingredients and then about 400 mils of buttermilk. So that's kind of what I would base recipes on. That would be the traditional recipe, the 450 or the pound of flour. So into that as well, so that's about 400 of flour. And I'm going to add into that, just for an extra little bit of nutrition and protein, I'm going to add some oat bran. So I picked up some from Flavins and it's a nice addition to bread. And I like adding anything like this, as well as that adding, like I'm going to add some seeds in here as well. And it just really adds some, like obviously extra nutrition, but also a little bit of crunch, which is nice in a bread. So everything needs to be sieved. As you can see, there's kind of little lumps in the flour. So it's important to always sieve the flour when you're making the bread. And sometimes if you're using a thicker or a you know, a less fine wholemeal, a lot would get caught there, and that's fine. Once it gets down to that stage, I would just add it in, give it a little mix, and I'm going to add in to that. So that's what we have here. I'm also going to add in my bread soda. So that's our bicarbonate of soda, it's also known as. So about a teaspoon of that. So that's very important because that's what works with the buttermilk to give the rise for the soda bread. So just 1 teaspoon. So when we're using these little measures, it's important to flatten the top. And that's just half of one. I couldn't find my teaspoon this morning just when I was starting. So that is 1 teaspoon. Again, we're sieving it in, and at this point I would say it's important to kind of give everything a little bit of a mix, just like so. Half a teaspoon of salt, and it's important not to add the bread soda and the salt together just because it can affect the rise of the soda bread. So I'll just sprinkle that in, and again I'll give it just a little mix like this, just to combine all the ingredients, just an even distribution of the flours and the rising agent. And on top of that now, so we have about 450 grams here. I'm going to just add a few seeds in, so a few sunflower seeds. You can add any seeds you want. You can add pumpkin seeds. I'm going to add just a few sesame as well, but chia seeds, anything you want. And just, it again adds a little bit of crunch, a little bit of protein and some extra fibre, and it's all good. And I'm going to make a well in the centre. So the well in the centre is just to add, so we can add all the buttermilk all at once. So I'm going to make that little well like this. So I have 400 mils of buttermilk here, but I would never add all of it all at once because buttermilks can vary. Some are thicker than others, so you may need a little bit more or a little bit less. So I'll always hold back a little bit and then just see how the dough is feeling. But as well as that, an important tip, if you don't have buttermilk and you just want to make a soda bread, and like I said, the bread could be just completely white flour, so you could use plain white flour, which is perfect, like 450 of white flour, a little bit of salt, bread soda, buttermilk, and that's it, and you'll have your loaf of bread. But for this one we've added the extra wholemeal and the seeds, and the oat bran. But for the buttermilk, I'm going to add that in now, more or less all in one go, but I'm going to hold back just a little bit. So right into the centre of the dish. So I'll hold back probably about 50 mils or maybe 30 mils of it. Just see how we're getting on, because we can add it in, but we can't obviously take it out if it's too wet and it just can interfere with it. And with your hand like a claw, this is just the easiest way to kind of get the whole mixture together. Now you could actually start this with a fork if you wanted to, that's absolutely perfect. But I'm just going to do it all with my hands and my clean hands. So here we go. So we're just going to mix this up, and it comes together very, very quickly. So now it's starting to come together nicely. And it's important to know too that when you're making soda bread, I would always have I'd have the flour just beside me so that This is a tiny little bit wet, so I'll just sprinkle over a little bit of flour, and just a tiny bit, just enough to kind of help it come together. So you wouldn't be kneading this dough, so you never really need soda bread. You want it to just kind of come together nicely, and that, I find anyway, can make for softer soda bread when it's kind of a, you know, not as dense a mixture. It comes together nicely, and I just add a tiny little bit of flour just to help it all. And as you're bringing it around the bowl, you're collecting every little bit of that mixture, and all the extra little bits of dough are all coming together. And it's important to know too, if you don't have buttermilk, a great substitute is you can use ordinary milk, any milk, and a tablespoon of, well, maybe you might need more than a tablespoon, maybe 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice or white vinegar. So it's great, it just adds this, the little bit of acid that's needed to interact with the bread soda. So it's a good substitute. If you're stuck, you would do that. So as you can see now I've added a tiny little bit of flour, so you just kind of, you'd know by the eye. So I didn't need that extra little bit of milk here today, but and then it's funny, sometimes I would have to add that extra bit of milk too. So it just depends really on the type of buttermilk and even just the heat of everything. But that's it, so it all kind of comes together as a complete ball of dough. So now you could either add it, so at this stage, like as soon as, the same with for any kind of cakes or anything really, as soon as you've added your liquids and your rising agent, as soon as you've added your liquids and your rising agents, the rising agents would start to work. So it's important to not leave it sitting around, get it into the oven as quick as possible. Now I am just dusting a little bit of flour there, a little bit too much actually, so I'll just save that for again, but it's good just to dust it so that it will it just stops it from sticking. So it's only kind of the tiny little bit of flour there onto that, and otherwise you could use so I'm just going to transfer it over, so as you can see, like, you know, you have it good and ready there for going. I'll transfer it over to the loaf. You could use a loaf tin, which is another option. I just kind of prefer the round. The loaf tin is probably easier for slices, and especially if you want to slice it up and put it into the freezer when it's cool. I would normally grease it with some butter. So, and that gives a lovely crust then when it comes out. But you need to have it greased well, because this is you know, it's a sticky enough kind of a mixture, even though we have it and it's movable here. When it starts to cook, it does need the little bit of butter or the little bit of neutral oil just to help it out off the tin. But I'm just doing it here in the tray today, so we'll put it across into it. So this obviously will help with when we want to cut it later. It makes it a little bit easier when we've already cut it, but it also allows for a more evenly distributed heat when it's being cooked. So so we cut it into that traditional cross for the soda bread, and then again a little kind of an indent, little stab on each corner, and that again is just to help with the cooking of it. Now you could add, and what I will actually add are a few little seeds just in here. Now sometimes they don't stick if the bread is very dry, so we have to kind of pat them down a little, but it's just nice to add, and it's and that's it. So I have the oven on very hot. It's at 200 degrees and that's a fan oven, and I'm going to pop this in for about 40 minutes. So after about 38 minutes or so, I'll have a little look at it and see, and then pop it back in if it's needs it. So yeah, so that's it. So this has been, the bread has been in 40 minutes at this stage, so it's looking like it's good, like it's cooked. But this is the test to see if it's hollow. So It seems fairly hollow, but I think I might. What I often do at this stage is just if I'm in any little bit of doubt, if I feel, oh, it might be still a tiny bit wet on the inside, I will pop that back into the oven, just straight on the tray, or just straight on the rack. So just to give it an extra mix. That's it. The extra couple of minutes just made it that little bit firmer. So that's the soda bread. I'd like to give it a go. You could make your own versions and mix it up whatever way you like with different flours, seeds, even put fruit in there. You could put a little bit of honey, anything you want. That's just a basic recipe and delicious, lovely, lovely homemade soda bread. I love it when it's just a little bit warm, but it's best on the day it's made, but it's also lovely. You could hold on to it. You could either, once it's cold, chop it up and put it into the freezer and use it slice on slice, or you could just, for the next couple of days, if it lasts that long, you could toast it. It's perfect. It's really nice toast. So that's it.